Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Lauren and this video is part of my top sewing tips series, which you'll find on my YouTube channel and on my blog as well. And this week I'm going to be talking about hems for dressmaking, specifically the double fold hem. I think that sewing a nice crisp neat hem is essential to getting a good finish on your handmade garments, and there are various different types of hem that you'll come across out there as you start dressmaking, but this video will focus on the double fold hem method, which is just a nice simple good all-rounder if you're still quite new to dressmaking and you're still learning how to sew. So for the double fold method, it basically means that you're folding the fabric towards the back or the wrong side of the fabric twice, and how much you fold it back will depend on what your pattern says. So sometimes it can be quite a narrow turning, so you might just be turning it back a little bit, or sometimes it might be a deeper hem, so it means that you press it back a little bit and then a little bit more again, and that just makes the hem deeper or sort of bigger. And the reason that you would do that might just depend on the style of garment, so that just might be the way that the garment's been sort of designed to look, or it might be more of a functional thing as well. So when you have a deeper hem, it adds more weight to the hem, and that might be part of getting the garment to hang properly too. So your instructions will tell you how much you're actually folding it back. So it really helps with this method if you have a nice hot iron with steam. Now always just check that your fabric can withstand the heat and the steam that's in your iron, so just do a little test patch. If your garment's made from natural fibres, then usually it can withstand quite a nice hot iron, but if you are working with synthetics, then it's better to just turn the iron down a little bit. But I would always just say try and go for as hot as you feel like your fabric can withstand. So when you do come to measure how much you're turning it back, there's various different ways that you can do that. You could use this little aluminium seam gauge, which I find is really useful because it can get hot itself. It doesn't matter if the iron accidentally touches it, so it's quite handy just to have nearby when you're folding fabric back and then pressing it in place with the iron. The other thing that I'll sometimes use as well is on my ironing board cover, I've got this special prim cover which is available to buy in my online shop, and it has a centimetre grid marking on it. So you just line up the edge of your fabric along one of those lines and then fold it back however many centimetres it is that you needed to fold back to make your hem. So once you've got your hem pressed in place, you then have to somehow secure it in place, and I'm going to talk you through 3 different ways to do that. So you could do it where you just top stitch it down. So top stitching just means that you're going to see the stitching on the top or the outside of the garment. So you would, after you've pressed it, you would then stitch it. You could either stitch it from the inside of the garment, so you're just lining the foot up along the edge of the fold that you can see, or you could stitch it from the front and then just make sure that you're catching the bit at the back where it's folded. So then obviously the stitching is visible in that method. Or you could do a machine blind stitch. So this is where you have a separate foot that goes onto the machine. It looks, on my Brother sewing machine, it looks like this. And then you would select a blind hem stitch on the machine, and what that does is it just sews, it's a little bit like a zigzag stitch, but it basically just catches a little bit of the fabric. So once it's stitched in place, you're going to see just tiny little sort of thread marks on the outside. So you have to just fold, once you've got your hem pressed in place, you then just fold the fabric back and then you feed it into the machine like this. And then as you can see, as the machine stitches, it just sort of juts out to the sides a little bit, and then that's it catching the fabric that will then be visible on the outside. So that's a machine blind hem. So to do it by hand, I would start off by securing my threads on the inner fold of the fabric, and then what you're aiming to do is just catch a tiny little bit of what is the main outer fabric. So you're just catching a few little threads and then coming back and taking a bigger stitch into the fold, and then just working your way around the whole of the hem. And then what you see on the outside of the garment is hopefully a very, very subtle, if at all, just a tiny little catch or a very small little stitch. So that's kind of where the name comes from, that it's a blind hem. So the quickest is definitely going to be the top stitch, and then the longest the hand stitched one, but it's just sort of personal preferences to whatever you prefer. So the next thing that I wanted to touch on is when you're sewing a garment that has a very pronounced A-line shape. So it might be a top, or it might be a skirt and a dress, and it's when the garment's more fitted at the top and then it comes down as this sort of A-line shape. And because you're going to be turning fabric to the inside of the garment, and you're going to be folding it back into a smaller circumference all the way around, you have to take account of that a little bit when you're sewing the side seam and preparing to turn the fabric back. So what you will quite often see in garments that are designed to have a really pronounced A-line shape is that the side seam might be shaped a little bit different at the bottom. So it might look a little bit like this, so you can see it sort of comes out and then goes back in again. And it's important when you are sewing your side seam that you follow that shape of the fabric. So you'll almost have to pivot your line of stitching a little bit to go around those curves. And then it just means when you then do fold the fabric back to the inside of the garment, it's going to sit flat and you're not going to get any sort of wrinkles or kind of creases or bumps in the fabric as you turn it back to the inside. The other thing that you might have to take account of if you are using a very lightweight fabric or a slippery fabric is letting the garment or the hem drop out, and you would usually do that overnight. So it basically means just putting your garment on a hanger or on a tailor's dummy if you've got one, or a mannequin, and just letting gravity take effect on the garment and letting everything sort of drop out. And what you'll then notice is that some parts of the hemline look a wee bit longer than others. So you can then just even that out. You could try to sort of do it by eye, or you could use a hem marker that's like a little sort of stick on a stand, and you can adjust that to whatever height you wanted or needed it to be. So you'd put it to where the hem was at its highest level, and then you would be evening it out from there. But there's a little sort of chalk pot that sits in there with a puffer thing connected to it. So you just squeeze this puffer and then it shoots out a little line of chalk that then sticks to the garment, and you just do that all the way around the garment. So you could wear it and have someone do that to you, or if you've got a mannequin, you can put it on there and then just trim it and even it out, and then you would be looking at pressing it and hemming it in your chosen method. If the garment has a very long hem, and by long I mean like the circumference of it is very long, so it might be a very full skirt or dress, for example, with lots of panels in it, or it might be a circle skirt, and the hem is just very, very long, goes round and round and round. Usually narrow hems are better in that instance, so you're looking at just turning the fabric a little bit. So if you did happen to have an overlocker, then you could overlock it. I do that method quite a lot. I'll just overlock it so that the raw edges are covered or sort of sealed, and then I'll just press it back once, just the seam allowance of the overlock, and then I'll top stitch it in place. If you don't have an overlocker, then you can do a very narrow turned hem, and I find the easiest way to do that is to sew a line of stitching on the sewing machine about 5mm from the raw edge, and that acts as a pressing guide. So once you've sewn that on the machine, you can then take it to the ironing board and press back to that seam line that you've made, and then just turn it again so that you're hiding the raw edge. And that helps you to get a nice even narrow turned hem, and then you could top stitch it in place or hand stitch it if you wanted. So I hope you found that useful and it's helped to shed a little bit more light on hems. If you've got any questions, then just leave me them in the comments below. You can also check out my blog post, which is linked to this video, and it's just got kind of like notes from what I've said and lots of pictures as well. So if you want to see the content in a different format, then you can click the link in the description. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, just hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!